After Hengist and Horsa took over Kent, Cerdic and his son landed in what would become Wessex, the home of the West Saxons. Jutes were actually the first Germanics to settle in Wessex since they settled in Hampshire, but same as in Kent, the Jutes and Saxons might have been much closer in culture than we reckon. Either way, the Jutes were either driven out or ended up mixing into the wider Saxon culture. Cerdic might have stepped into a position of leading Wessex, left behind by the Romans after killing off the Briton rivals, mainly one known as Natanliod. King Cerdic is the earliest recorded ancestor that our current royal family claims descent from, though Cerdic himself said he descends from Angul and Woden. He's also the earliest point most English folk can trace their ancestry to with any real certainty. However, Cerdic might not have seen himself as a king, just a tribal leader, his tribe, the Yewizi. He also coincided with, and there are many theories about Cerdic within and around the Arthurian legends. Some say he was represented by Arthur, some by Mordred, Arthur's enemy, and others by one of Arthur's knights, Sir Caradoc. Around 500 AD, the Battle of Badon took place as part of the War of the Saxon Federates. Here, Cerdic or Ely of Sussex faced the Britons, some say against the legendary King Arthur, though it was likely just a Briton king or chief. It was a major victory for the Britons, halting the westward push of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms for a time. 560 AD, King Ceawlin played a major role in turning Wessex into a powerful kingdom by expanding its land, stretching all the way to the Bristol Channel. Wintoncester, modern-day Winchester, would later become the central seat of power for Wessex. Ceawlin's great-grandson Cynuggles was the first of the dynasty to convert to Christianity, and he was also the first to be officially recorded as King of Wessex, though it's possible the title had been in use earlier. In 643 AD, Cynuggles' son Cenwalh, King of Wessex, soon came under the direct influence and control of Penda of Mercia due to Mercia's rise in political and military dominance. Cenwalh married Penda's sister, likely under pressure, but later cast her off, stirring up trouble. As Bede recorded, for he put away the sister of Penda, king of the Mercians, whom he had married, and took another wife, whereupon a war ensuing, he was by him expelled his kingdom. Cenwalh was forced into exile in East Anglia for 3 years before getting back his throne. After Cenwalh's death, his wife Saxbor, possibly Penda's sister as well, ruled for a short while. She might have been the only queen regnant, not consort of the Anglo-Saxons, reigning for about a year. Her rule shows both sharp political sense and strong support from her powerful family. In 686 AD, King Cadwalla became the first to formally take on the title King of the West Saxons, likely after asserting his rule as Bretwalda over the various West Saxon tribes. Before his reign, Wessex had been run by underkings, who Cadwalla eventually put down and removed, showing that Wessex might have been less unified than some of the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Alternatively, these underkings might have been rival factions from the wider West Saxon royal line, locked in power struggles among themselves. Either way, under Cadwalla, Wessex became fully centralised for the first time, or maybe re-centralised after earlier breaking apart. King Ian used this power to defeat the Briton kingdom of Dumnonir around 710 AD and annexed it. He was highly religious and invested in building many churches and monasteries around Wessex, as well as his own legal code. However, he put his religion above his kingly duties and decided to abdicate and go off to Rome. He left no heir, basically leaving Wessex at the whim of their powerful neighbour, Mercia. By around 730 AD, Ethelbald of Mercia dominated Wessex and most of the other South Anglo kingdoms, and Wessex carried on being dominated till the death of Offa. It's likely because of King Ian that the monarchs of England swear never to abdicate, even to this day. After the Mercian supremacy and death of Offa, Wessex got much more politically adaptive and managed to take in much of that old power. This mostly kicked off in 825 with the Battle of Ellendun, where King Egbert of Wessex won a decisive victory against Mercia. Egbert himself was born in Kent, but had to live in Wessex because of Mercia's dominance. The Battle of Ellendun is seen as the death knell to the Mercian supremacy. After this victory, Wessex expanded, annexing all of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms along the south coast. Egbert didn't stop there. He pushed into Mercia in 829 and forced King Wiglaf into exile. He then forced his way into Northumbria and made it submit, making Wessex and Egbert the overlord at that point. That only lasted about a year though, till Mercia rose up in revolt. It was during this time that small Viking raids started picking up steam, making the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms more erratic and less stagnant. Viking comes from the Old English word Vikingar, meaning pirate, and in the early days they were seen more as a nuisance or punishment from God than any real threat. Egbert and his sons fought against the Vikings and did a proper good job, nothing like what telly shows like Vikings or The Last Kingdom make out. Egbert and his son, who'd later be King Ethelwulf, fought the Vikings on more than one occasion. Egbert's grandson and King Ethelwulf's son is Alfred the Great, who we'll be talking about a lot more in a later video. Right now though, we're talking about Egbert's granddaughter, King Athelwulf's daughter, and Alfred's sister, Athelswith. Athelswith married the Mercian king Burgred in 853, bringing an end to the fighting between Wessex and Mercia, the two strongest kingdoms in England. This marked one of the key beginnings of a more united England. The new invading force, the Vikings, known to the early Anglo-Saxons as the Danes, who we'll be speaking more about later, might have pushed the English to stand more together. The two kingdoms even started using a shared coinage system, strengthening London's place as a major mint and trade hub in this still loosely unified England. Wessex also backed Mercia directly in their wars against the Welsh, likely showing once more that the English were starting to see themselves as one people. Though this was still just cooperation, not proper unification. A full uniting weren't likely even in the minds of the Angles back then, as it was still common and accepted for kingdoms to be split between sons after a king's death. Athelwulf's father, Athelwulf, was actually planning to split Wessex up when he died, just like his own father had done. The practice of dividing a kingdom among a ruler's sons weren't tied to a single written law, but came from a tradition known as partible inheritance. When Athelwulf came back from his pilgrimage to Rome, he did so with a new wife, Judith of Flanders. King Athelwulf's son, Prince Athelbald, weren't happy about his father's plan to split the kingdom after his death, and he led an open revolt against him, ruling over about half the kingdom with a fair few powerful allies behind him. This almost sparked a civil war in Wessex, but they came to a deal instead, agreeing to rule the kingdom between them, Athelwulf taking the west of Wessex and Athelbald the east. When Athelwulf died, the kingdom stayed split between two of his sons, Athelbald and his brother Athelbert, King of Kent, who seemed to get on well enough. Athelbald also took his father's widow, Judith of Flanders, as his new queen consort. From this point on, Wessex turned its attention to the constant Viking raids. Be sure to check out my other channel, History Sticks, for the complete, longer and comprehensive video.